Okay, so when I was 9, I immigrated from England to Australia with my mum and dad. Dad wanted a better life for us, so we left all our support network and our extended family and came to Australia. I found that difficult, probably the first 12 months, trying to adapt to a new life with school and making friends, and that was quite hard. We got the house in the suburbs, the brand new house, and I guess I know that Dad was probably trying to escape some of his past, and that's why he sort of moved to Australia in hope that we'd have a better life. But I think things caught up with him in the end. Mum and Dad went through separation, and that hit Dad quite hard. And when I was 14, he took his life. He made a few attempts, and on the third attempt, yeah. So for me, my mum already had a new partner. I didn't have any siblings, so I found that it was quite a lonely time for me. Mum's relationship with Dad wasn't the best, so any conversation around Dad was quite negative. So I felt like I couldn't talk to her about him. I found I couldn't talk to anyone about him because all of my aunts and uncles and my cousins, who I was quite close with back in England, were so far away. The friends that I had at that time, they didn't know how to support me. Half of them probably didn't know what had happened because it was quite stigmatised, and, we're not going to talk about that. So not having that support from my friends and being sad and feeling lonely, and I felt like I couldn't have fun anymore. I became quite isolated and lost friends. And then it was more of a safety net for me that I put up a wall and didn't really let people in after that to protect myself. I guess I never dealt with Dad's death. I internalised it, and probably looking back, like I said, just put up a wall. And it wasn't until I guess I got married and had my own children, and at the time my daughter reached the age I was at 14, I became this protective mother who was probably a little bit over the top. If she was going through any difficulties, I just wanted to fix it for her. That was unhelpful for her because rather than listening to what she was going through, I was trying to fix it. So I wouldn't really hear her. And that's what I guess I found that was happening to me when I was the same age. No one was hearing what I was saying. There was judgment around what I was experiencing. The one thing that I did have back then was I had an auntie, so my godmother back in England. I could ring her anytime, and she was the one person who did listen to me. I would be on the phone crying, but she would just sit with me. And I think that's one of the most important things, is just sitting with someone when they go through that process of what they're actually experiencing with their feelings. And it wasn't until my daughter was needing help with what life had brought her that I actually reached out and got help myself. What I discovered was that I had never dealt with Dad's death and what happened after Dad's death. I felt like at the time I had no support. And I think that's where it's really important for children who have been bereaved by suicide to have really strong support networks in place so that they've got a safe place and a safe person they can talk with and talk to about it. And for me, it helped me when I was older to talk with other people who had experienced the same thing that I'd experienced, so losing a parent by suicide. I didn't have the support at school. Again, I don't think any of my teachers knew what had happened. And especially with that, transition from year to year, I found it with my own children that teachers don't talk from year to year. So you've got to keep retelling, the story so that people do get that support and background history. And finding a good therapist was also really difficult. When I went to my GP, I found the first thing they wanted to do was prescribe me a pill, but they didn't really ask the reasons behind that, because I guess I was in my 40s when I started re-experiencing the things that I hadn't dealt with. People tend to, I guess, judge too quickly as to what it might be. And some people just write a script and say, here, take this pill, which I found more numbing. So I then wasn't able to experience the feelings that I needed to feel to work through those emotions. I know that with my own daughter, I think I mentioned that I just wanted to fix her. And rather than listening to her and wanting to take care of her, I took her own power away from her. I think the one thing I've learned was it's okay to make mistakes. And if we make a mistake, we learn from that mistake. Whereas I think I was too busy just trying to be perfect and guard myself from making those same mistakes or experiencing something that I couldn't fix. So knowing that it's okay to make mistakes and it's okay not to be okay. I think that's one of the biggest things. People expect you to be okay 10 years, 20 years, 30 years down the track. But I'm 30 years down the track and some days are still really hard. And just knowing that it's okay not to be okay and acknowledging whatever it is you're feeling. So if it's sadness, feel the sadness and allow yourself to cry. And if it's anger, work through the anger with someone. Because people turn to drugs and alcohol because they don't know where to go and they don't know how to get the help. And that's one thing Dad turned to. Dad turned to alcohol. So I feel like if there was more support for him around that maybe he would have got the help he needed. Oh, there's a few unhelpful things people say. I guess one thing is that people minimise your experience. So they talk about their own experience. So if you tell someone about, or someone knows that you've lost someone to suicide, they might say, oh yeah, I lost my dad. He died of cancer. And they try and kind of, I guess, fill the uncomfortableness with their own story, which is really unhelpful because you just want to be heard. And if it means the other person sitting in silence because they don't know what to say, then just sit with that silence. One of the other things that was really unhelpful was if your dad had loved you, he wouldn't have taken his own life. And that had a lot of repercussions for me. Yeah, and just people minimising your grief, that, you should be grateful that you have a roof over your head and food on the table, just really not hearing what you're experiencing. I'd like people to know that if they're experiencing heartache or they've experienced their own traumatic experience, that it's okay to reach out for help and that they don't need to do it alone, and that it's okay not to be okay. And it doesn't mean that they're any less of a person for actually needing help, because we all need help. And find that safe person that you feel that you can really open up to and be vulnerable to. And if it can't be someone in your life, then go and find a professional person that you can talk to. And that could be hard. It can be hard. It can be hard finding that right person as well. But there are people out there who want to help. It's really important. I guess from my experience that, if you're a dad out there or if you're anyone out there and you've lost your job or you're experiencing a broken relationship, it doesn't make you the person you are. So just because that's happened to you, it doesn't mean you're any less of a person, and it doesn't make your identity. Um, and I see you, and I acknowledge you, and I want you to know that there's people there that can help you. I don't know if it ever, for me, I don't know if it ever got easier, because there's still those days that are extremely difficult. And I think it's something that's with you for a lifetime. And that's okay, because you do learn to live with it. But, things are always going to come up, because when my daughter gets married, she's 18 now, but when she gets married, I'm going to miss the fact that my dad was not there to see it. When I hold my first grandchild, I'm going to wish that, my dad was there to see that. So I think there's always experiences in life that you're going to miss that person, and it's going to. I once had a therapist that say, life is a bit like a tree. There's going to be times where the branch falls off, and it's going to sprout a new branch and a new leaf. So through life, I think things are going to come up, and it might throw you back into that depths of despair, but that's okay. And you just need to acknowledge what it is and where it's come from, and reflect on that and go, what is it that's making me so sad today? And acknowledging that sadness and going, oh yeah, okay, that makes sense. And then once you've acknowledged it, I think it's easier to move through it,